Welcome back. We just acquired another person on the discussion. I would like he's not appearing on the slides. So, but I would ask everybody that has not taken part in the panel discussion before to just introduce yourselves and which shop system you are representing. Yeah, we have to share microphones.
Hi, I'm Sander Mangel. I'm from the Netherlands. I work there for a merchant, and we use Magento. I've been using Magento for way too long, I think. So Michael asked me to represent them over here.
Are you a good representative of Magento then?
I think
I thought we made it better since he left Magento like 3 years ago, and now you're telling me you don't like it?
I love it. Yes. No.
Okay.
I really enjoy working with Magento.
Okay, thanks. So next one, Pierluigi.
Are you planning on using something else? You got a nice choice over here then. All right. My name is Pierluigi. I'm the product manager of the OXID eShop from OXID eSales. A shop framework based in the south of Germany in the beautiful town of Freiburg. Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least.
I'm Gage, Chief Product Officer of commercetools. Background, traditional monolithic ATG world, and responsible for product management, product delivery, and hosting at commercetools.
Okay, so whenever you have a question, I just say one more time, you go to http://slide.do, and there ask Michael. You can ask questions over there. I've got a couple of questions already. And another thing I want to try out right now. We have one more chair over there, and I saw those guys in the blue jackets with an S on the back. If somebody's here in the audience and you want to represent your shop system, it's your chance over there. Otherwise, it's going to be the chair of shame for tonight.
Again.
I'm sorry. That's something I do a lot. So, I'll start with one of the questions that is not the most voted one, but it kind of shows the solution you're representing right now. And this is short answers, everybody. What are your biggest customers? I would call it best known customers. And which market segment do you as a platform represent or target or whatever? Let's start with commercetools over there. Short.
Our largest customer is Reva Group. They do 53 billion a year online, and we power most of their subsidiaries. Our market segment, we have basically two. At the lower end of our market, it starts at maybe 25 million a year online, up to maybe 500 million, and that's API commerce. And at the upper segment, it's microservices. Those who are building out microservices, typically extending their monolith with new microservices.
Thanks. Dima.
So we do not have live customers yet, so basically we're pretty young product and released just at the beginning of this year. So if you're referencing to live customers, so I'm not ready to give live references yet, but we have already about 5 projects in implementation. So once we'll be ready, we will announce them.
Thanks.
So at Intershop we do B2C and B2B. We have over 300 customers worldwide, such big customers as HP or Word, but also smaller ones and cooler ones as Mr. Specs from Berlin.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we also do not disclose all the customers, but I think quite a few presented here today are all very large companies, like billion-euro customers. So like the Tom Taylor Group presented here today, ITU presented here today. I think the guys from the Takta Gates, Theo presented here today. I think these I can name since they presented already. And about the verticals, so it's easier for us to say which vertical we are not that excited about, and it's definitely publishing. And for the rest, we are very open.
Okay.
All right, we got a couple of customers. And just to say, in this EHI study of the top 1,000 shops in Germany, we placed more than 100. So to be pretty fair, it's like when you say Reva, we have like we got some Edeka stuff and you know, like Netto, or I cannot really say that we got a certain branch where we're going. So it's B2C, B2B, and yeah.
Okay, impressive. Sander is not exactly from Magento, but
Yeah, so I couldn't name the biggest customer. From my experience, I've worked with small shops, but also for soccer clubs. Magento 1 was definitely for smaller shops and bigger shops. You do see Magento now shifting to the bigger ones, especially with the new B2B pack. So I would say, yeah, pretty big customers.
the soccer club you were naming, like Liverpool, as far as I know? Feyenoord, that's important for, like Liverpool as well. But I know Bayern chose something else, I'm sorry. Yeah, so let's have a look at the questions over here. A lot of questions are around microservices, and something is like microservices, monolith. Like, what do you think about the two extremes in here, and why should customers even care about that from a business point of view?
I could take that. Having spent time in both worlds, I would say at different segments of the market, there are clearly preferences one way or the other. So if you have a 10-person dev shop...
Is there still a preference towards monolith?
At the lower end of the market, for sure. As I would argue, if you have a 5 or 10-person dev team, you can't do microservices at that level.
They can ask you to do it for them, right?
When you go up market, you know, just as a thought experiment, could you release Amazon.com as a 500 gigabyte ear file? And clearly, it's ridiculous. So there's a spectrum there, and what we see in the mid-market is monoliths extended with microservices, where you can put your search, your browse, maybe your category, your home pages. You put those in separate standalone microservices, but the core functionality can still live in your monolith. And that seems to work well, but over time what we're seeing is that many retailers are adopting a tech-first orientation, and they're getting rid of their old back-office software, and they're replacing it with individual microservices, granular pieces of functionality.
Anybody else?
Yeah. You go first.
So we at Intershop, we also love microservices, but of course we have a monolithic core with services around it. And yeah, in the last release, we even added a microservice technology stack. So we also added service discovery with Eureka. And we think, and we now also recommend our customers for customizations to do their customizations in separate microservices. So we definitely like the idea, but you have to find the right balance, that's for sure. Because Kelly has written in his book that, I may quote here, microservices are best if you want to write, or have to write millions of lines of code with hundreds, if not even thousands of developers. So do not prematurely optimize.
But how do you know how many lines of codes you're going to write up front? Objection.
Yeah. Luckily, on this conference, we're having both sides. I guess we got Kelly's presentation, and there will be mine tomorrow as well, just to make some commercial here. I think, like, first of all, microservices in the end is just an implementation. It's a tool. So the important stuff is what you're doing and why you're doing stuff, and then you make the decision on how you realize it. And just saying boldly microservices is the future or whatsoever, you can't say that. It never worked out in technology that way,
Well, obviously you can say it. The question is if you're right.
Well, what is right and what is wrong? It depends on
philosophy.
Yeah, it depends it really depends on what you need. And just to say that, because you just said a certain amount of numbers of lines, there's a nice article by Fowler that says you got to be that tall to use microservices, and the essence is microservices are extracted, not written. It's a tuning optimization when it becomes necessary.
Yeah, but you have to look back. You have to look at where the IT industry is headed in general, and it's moving towards agile cloud, right? And I would argue cloud is a prerequisite for microservices because each of the teams can then provision what they need. Containers, right? It's a great facilitator of microservices. people are clearly moving in that direction, and many people even say that microservices is by definition cloud native. So when you're building a cloud native app, you're moving in that direction of small teams, loosely coupled, clear service interfaces, a vertical orientation. It seems to be that's where things are heading, and I agree. There's not a lot of maturity out there, but especially in the US, where we're concentrating heavily, and especially at some of the top tier retailers out there who have 1,000+ IT departments, we're seeing that competency. And every day we start to see more and more organizations develop that competency.
But you said it yourself already. You said like small teams, and if some teams are working on this and some teams on this, how many companies have so many teams of developers? You know, I think it's good. We're talking here about what might Steve Jobs say and what did Jeff Bezos just say, but we're only talking about the peak. You know, where's the rest of the world?
Right.
Where's, I mean, most of us here are working for, not working for Zalando. We're working in smaller companies or whatsoever, and then we're getting like, you know, advice here, like, look on Microsoft, people are going that direction. It's like the top shots might be going that direction, but is it valid for, you know?
I would argue it is, because there's a big spectrum, right? So on one side you have a big old 90s style monolith, and I don't think anybody would argue for that anymore. I think that ship has sailed. On the other side you have the Amazon style, we're gonna build 10,000 microservices and we have 30,000 developers, and I don't think anybody is capable of doing that besides a few top organizations. But what we see is a lot of retailers, they started with the .com platform. And what they're doing is they're slowly extending that, right? And the features that are closer to the customers, so the homepage, the category pages, the browse pages, those can be broken out into smaller teams. So you can have a team of 20 managing your core, and then you have a team of 5 that just does search, a team of 5 that just does the product, right? And that's pretty pragmatic. And we're starting to see that fragmentation. And what that allows you to do is have completely separate release cycles. So the product detail team can release their service whenever they want to, decoupled from the monolithic team, which is a much slower release cycle.
But I guess what you're talking about is modularity. You know, it doesn't mean by definition that you have to use microservices here. Let's say, why are they called micro? Because John Micro invented them? No, it's because they're small.
It's a small domain.
It's a small domain, but you
But
know,
it
small
doesn't have
domains
to
can
be
be
small
put into
size.
services as well. There are service-oriented architectures that are living inside a monolith. I
No,
mean, there are modular systems where you can, you know, update modules by the time.
I have one question to everybody, not just you two.
You
From
want
my
something
point of
else than
view,
Microsoft?
from my point of view, microservices were a technology solution to a certain problem, like architecture. Like microservices are just an architectural pattern. Is it like the only thing to manage different teams doing different scopes, or
No,
does it have
absolutely not.
different, like, why shouldn't a smaller, like even a one team project be based on microservices in a small scale, just from a different understanding?
Because you have a lot of overhead with microservices.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, there's this myth around that complexity goes down if you shift to microservices, because everything looks fine and you got these tiny services that live in their own world and everyone understands what they're doing.
I'm just asking.
No,
Isn't there any case where stuff like that might even be used in smaller scales?
So we're
Just asking because I'm curious. I'm sorry.
we're running on Magento 1, which is a monolith and not very modular.
It's definitely not a microservice.
Definitely not. So we implement our own HTML to PDF library just as a class, right? And then we saw there was a lot of load coming from that particular class. And instead of scaling up the whole server, we decided to take that out and put it in, I don't know if it's a microservice, but it's a service. We're only like 3 or 4 developers, but in that case it made sense because it fitted the solution to be able to rapidly scale that. Would I want to pull out any other stuff and put it in a microservice? No, because basically it just becomes a black box and someone has to maintain it. Like a dedicated developer has to monitor it and do maintenance on it. So I think if you can make a case for a certain microservice, it's fine. Otherwise, just go for modular, and that's more than enough, I think.
Okay, so I guess we represented quite a lot of time on microservices here, which is okay because we had like the four of the top 6 questions were around microservices. If you have any more questions about that, approach those guys directly. I really like the terminology here. What is your stance on hype-driven development? I don't even know what hype-driven development is, but maybe somebody of you does know better than I. Hype-driven development, anybody?
Yeah, microservices. No, actually, it's really like this. There are 5 phases of hype-driven development. Don't you know that? There's a really nice article going around these days about it as well, explaining it.
I'm sorry, I can't read.
It's like with Yoda looking at you, the hype is strong in you, and you should ask yourself, how much do you fall to hypes? And you can see it also. You can see it also on the schedule of conferences.
So is that a thing now?
For me, like you get 6 questions and 4 of them are about microservices. Like, how many of you people here are programming on microservices?
I think it's because there's value there and people are interested in it. And you know, if you went back 10 years, microservices is where agile was back then. And yes, there's hype, right? Where, as Larry Ellison famously said, IT is more fashion-driven than women's clothing, and I think that's true. But at the same time, after a period of time, there's a real productivity that comes from that. And now I don't think you'd find anybody who at least claims to do waterfall. People probably do it, but they don't, you know, at least cop to it, right?
They claim to do otherwise.
Yeah, but then they don't do that.
And it's the same with microservices. And I agree we're not going to be doing Amazon-style microservices in the future for the mass market, but the principles in it, and maybe that term will stick around, and it's going to take some time, but I think that that will become the standard, as many have said that microservices is part of cloud-native application development.
But there's one dangerous side effect to it. I know we're sitting here as, you know, the people from e-commerce who know the shit, and we're saying stuff like that, and this is going to be the future. And there are many, you know, like salespeople around watching us, and then
not here. All developers.
You put them out, and then even developers.
That's why you're not in a suit, man.
No, but even developers who follow the leaders or whatsoever, and then you get confronted with that. You know, I got a wall in my office where I save funny quotes, where people come to me and say like, you know what, microservices are the future. When are we switching? And then you're like, so what? So how could you, do you know what it is? And they're like so convincing, you know, and they do not even know what it's about. And that's the shit. It's like, so maybe let's say we got a responsibility here.
There's a one first major takeaway here. OXID's got balls in their office. So one thing, like it's kind of hard to ask such questions to 6 persons, but one question that is more like on the feature part of that is what is the most requested feature you get asked by customers right now? Let's call it what is the hot stuff that is missing in any platform right now?
Back to your hype. People
not microservices.
No. People want machine learning.
What?
They want, yeah, right, another hype term. But no, people really do want individualized pricing. They want more intelligent algorithms for data quality. They want the system to be smart. And they want to apply machine learning principles to that. So we're seeing a lot of our customers, and again, you know, over time, I don't know how much of this will stick.
Can you provide support in that?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a machine learning-based product categorization tool, and it takes our product, our name, description, and image, and it will, as the merchandiser is selecting the category, it will show probabilities for what category it should be assigned to, because product miscategorization costs a lot of money. We also have another one for product data quality, to see if products look different, you know, data-wise than their peers, even though they might have all the fields filled in properly.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? What are the requested stuff?
So at Intershop, it's not really a single feature. It's more, how do we fit into their digitalization problem? So our clients, they have a much bigger problem than just the commerce part. They have to...
They have a much bigger problem. That sounds weird.
Yeah, to solve.
Okay.
And they have a lot of puzzle pieces they have to put together. So that's
I hope they
problem.
don't have the problem because they're customers of yours.
No.
Okay.
Because they solve their problem with Intershop, because we help them in their digital transformation.
Yeah. So architectural, how to fit the commerce platform into the architecture.
Yeah. Should I use a separate content management system or not? What's better?
Okay.
Again, from the let's say near-term roadmap, when I look at it, I think it's definitely what Kelly also said: personalization, personalized pricing, BI capability. So whatever it means to everybody, right? So everyone has its own definition, but I think.
What does it mean to you?
I mean, in general, it's not that important what it means to me, but I think what people put into this term is they want a smart system, as Kelly said. So you want to get some insights, you want to understand your basic KPI. So going maybe far beyond the traditional reporting that you would maybe expect, right? So you want a smart system, you want automation, and you do not want to just have tons of reports that you have to somehow, that you need people for interpretation and then do stuff. So you want smart features, and I think this is definitely something that many people are interested in today.
Having worked for a lot of international clients, localization is still a thing that is kind of challenging. Like, what kind of local shippers do you have, payment methods? How do you have, what kind of addresses do you have, stuff like that. I've rarely found a package that does that out of the box. I haven't worked with all of you, but it still seems to be a big challenge in e-commerce to really bring a localized experience to all customers.
I can maybe throw in one more, which might be interesting. So, like, because most probably we all somehow try to address this question. So, when it comes to the third-party integration or ecosystem, etc., so all these smaller bubbles that you would see on the landscape around your system, and we see that customers of ours have sometimes 20, sometimes 30 or more of the payment, logistic, tracking, recommendation engine, search, mailing, marketplace, and so on integrations. And this number, we see this number definitely increasing, right? So whatever used to be a standard feature in the Monolith back then, there is most probably a very smart service for this today. So a company that tries to monetize the knowledge of a better search, of a better recommendation engine, a better loyalty program, discount, whatever. And I think this is quite a challenge. So for all of us, so finding a smart way of integrating these guys, especially when it comes to upgrades, changes in our own APIs, in our own products, and their APIs, in a more and more fragmented market. So this is something I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree here, and you can come to my presentation tomorrow and I present the solution to you.
Oh my.
Good.
I got another problem that obviously is shared by some people in the audience. People have worked on huge shops, like I read something like 600 billion euros of revenues, I guess, per year. And they customized the platform heavily, and then in the end, development came to a halt. Like how to avoid stuff like that from a system vendor perspective. Obviously, it's not you doing the customization, but how to avoid that? Maybe Dima?
I think important.
I guess that's something you had problems with in the past as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like a very important thing is to follow best practices, because like again, we had a lot of situations when platform used as a base for e-commerce solution, and then customer was not happy because of the end implementation. So follow best practices, involve vendor for additional consulting, like make sure that you do stuff right, and I think that will prevent to have such issues.
Do you provide best practices for the developers for your platform? Because
Absolutely.
otherwise everybody has different best practices.
Absolutely. I mean, we're sharing our experience on how we deploy our application, and we're sharing this experience with our partners, with our developers, and that's the way how you communicate and prevent these issues.
Nobody else experiences stuff like that?
Regarding customization, of course, the most important thing is to...
Well, you do only 10% of customization, so it's easier for you.
Yeah, you have to have APIs, of course, and you have to keep them stable.
Microservices?
And microservices is really a good way to put the customizations in, but it's not always possible this way. So we also allow to do customizations in the system.
Okay.
I've done some of these integrations in the past, and they would end up with 4, 5, 6. I had one customer with 7 million lines of code. And the problem is if you have a code base that large, if you touch a knob here, you don't know how it's going to work on the other side. So you have to...
What do you mean on the other side?
If you touch inventory, you might update pricing accidentally, for example. You also run into, it's almost like a tragedy of the commons type problems from economics, where individual developers in a code base that large are incentivized not to break anything because they don't know exactly how the calling code actually uses something that they happen to be working on. So you end up with a general neglect, which tends to snowball over time, and it's because developers don't own anything in particular.
But don't you describe a situation where it's too late already? Because then you're kind of like fear-driven development?
Well, in that case, I don't want to use the M word again, but you have to carve out business functionality into separate domains, right? And it's decoupling the problem. It's making it into smaller domains where groups of developers can own truly end-to-end something. Because if you have a code base that large, that's a couple million lines of code, that's what naturally happens over time, is it just devolves into nobody wants to touch anything because it's all very fragile.
Yeah.
And also
how do you avoid? Sorry, but how do you avoid that in the first place?
You start. Well,
you start all over again. Yeah, but whenever you start and you got your first 10 lines of codes and bam, it's 7 million lines of code and you're in the same situation again.
You use the strangler pattern, and again, it's not a thing unless Martin Fowler documents it, but he calls it the strangler pattern, and that's what I was describing before, which is. Cleave out easy pieces of functionality. So, for example, personalized pricing as a service, that's something that can be done in isolation on its own, right? And you just look to, we had a microservices meetup last night at our office, and I think it was really interesting. Our developer who was giving the pitch, he talked about a monolith being a big plate of nachos, right? And there's a big cheese on the top of the nachos, and if you touch one piece, it all disappears. All the cheese comes with it. He called it the cheesiest metaphor. But what you have to look at is the side, right? So in any plate of nachos, you've got little chips off to the side, and you can start pulling them off one at a time without trying to pull the entire monolith in the center off. And you have to look around the edges and what can you chisel off. And then once you've done that, you can start attacking that center piece.
Okay, Pierre? Is it Pierre or Pierluigi or what? Luigi?
Whatever you
Are you
want
the
it
green
to
guy
be. Call me Carl.
Carl.
It's Carl. All right. Well, the question's a tough one. I can't give a clear answer to it, but I'd like to change the perspective a little bit because the way it comes up is the problem. Actually, for me and the 90-10 guys, it's no problem. It's this discussion of do you buy out of the box applications that you have to customize, or do you start customization from zero? So from a universitary point of view, I would say, yeah, do it right and start beginning from scratch, and write everything 100% for what the customer needs. But the big thing here is we're not building without a sense. We're doing it for a certain cause, and the cause is money. And it's market share. Yeah, that's the point. So if you wait until your customization, the development that is done for you is over, everyone else will have eaten the cake, if you can say that in English, I don't know. But it's like, there's nothing worse than watching someone else fishing where you would like to be fishing. And that's the problem here. And then you start to get out. And then you start with a 70% solution that you fix to become the thing you want to have. And then you end up with that struggle. So
I think maybe also trying to change the perspective a little bit. So there are certainly some best practices you can approach this problem like from a pure tech or architecture perspective. You can like sit in front of the blank piece of paper and then try to draw the best architecture that you can think of that most probably will have to change over time because you will learn things that you cannot predict. Or you can maybe just from, maybe applying more business sense. If you're a small organization, let's say not that small that it doesn't make sense at all, but you start, you're ambitious, you know that you will grow, right? And then you can slice out parts while you grow. For example, when you start hiring certain people for departments, so when you start getting shareholders for, stakeholders for certain functionality, when you start hiring people for content marketing or for product or category management or pricing, these people will have requirements. They will dictate how they want this system behave, what kind of logic they want, what kind of UI they want. So trying to predict all of this and slice it the way you think as an architect makes sense. It's maybe not the smartest way, but doing this while your organization grows, while you are getting stakeholders, these people tell you what features they want, how they want the system to behave. And then when you discover that, look, I have requirements in the CMS part or the PIM part or the price management part that make sense from an economic point of view, from a I need to scale it, I need to operate it, like this example with this PDF class that you mentioned, I need a separated release cycle for this because maybe this group of people needs the software to be released more often than the other group. Then you do it, right? And then it's maybe microservice, maybe it's macroservice, maybe you slice not like micro parts, but you put the entire domain of a product with everything into a bigger block, a bigger chunk. The price might be also coming with discounts and personalization, right? So this might be one of the best practices. I definitely think it's not recommendable to just do it on a pure architecture, predictive kind of way on a piece of paper.
Okay. I've got one extension. I would like to know whether, like, there's one active guy in the audience. His name is Björn. Are you a developer? Okay. He's asking a question that kind of extends the question we had discussed before, and I like to share it with you. And he asks, isn't the developer the problem? And I would ask you to...
Could you please stand up so that everyone can see you?
No, don't blame him. He's just brave. But I would ask you to answer the question in a way that you are able to leave the room afterwards. You're a developer. You are free.
So any code I write it very scalable, and then I'm very proud of it. And then in the end, I figure out that I wrote it scalable, but we're scaling up other way, I guess. And I don't really want to throw away all my code because it's so beautiful. Yeah, then there's a little bit of pride, and I start to kind of tweak it, refactor it, and it becomes messy. I think that a lot of developers have done that.
Shouldn't become more beautiful by refactoring? That's what I heard.
Exactly. That's how it starts.
Okay.
So I think it's, as a developer, it's also about learning to throw away your code and just start over, and maybe even write code that's meant to only live for a couple of months. But I guess that's sometimes a challenge.
Okay. Like, somehow I agree with the questions anyways. Like, from my point of view, and that's what I've tried to pull out of your mouth as well. Like, from my point of view, people rarely take responsibilities for what they are creating, and that's why it shouldn't even come to the point where 7 million of code are unmaintainable. So, and what I like, there are things we can do to try to keep quality high. That's why we are here, I think. I'm pretty sure there are talks about stuff like that as well. So, yeah.
But to be honest, so I've been involved in more than 100 projects. So very often the developer is not the problem, but is made the problem because at the end of the day, he's put into conditions where he cannot. I mean, every developer, let's say, if you believe Steve Jobs that it's more like liberal arts what developers do, then everyone, you could say, wants to produce like the best possible technical outcome. But I mean, either you are working on the agency side or you're working for a retailer where money counts, where time to market counts, and these business people, they are always willing to sacrifice for quality. Of course, they will never say it, but if they have to decide between launching faster or spending another 3 weeks for refactoring or doing another round of code review or another round of pair programming or whatever, most probably in the majority of all cases that I know, they will not allow this to happen. So quality is sacrificed because of so they think because of business value. In reality, it's different. So of course, it comes with higher maintenance cost, etc., etc. But this they don't care about because this happens in the future. So again, the developers made the problem, although he did not want to write bad software or non-maintainable software or software just just him can read.
So a clear yes and no, right? Yeah, but I get your point. So
what I would say, the business user does actually not want to talk to the developer if it's not really necessary. So a business user is fine if she can solve the business problem and the software is readily available. So that's why SaaS solutions are so successful.
Well, as the developers are targeted to being the problem here, I got 2 messages for you developers. First of all, raise your voice when something like this comes up, because you're the paid experts in the company. And if someone who has no understanding of anything pays an expert, he wants to believe in him, you know? You're the one responsible for it. Take the responsibility and stand up and become this expert and become this person. This is also often a problem, that you're having meetings with this tech guy that does not speak up and he's over-talked by a marketing guy or whatsoever. And the second thing is that people who make decisions believe in numbers, and technical depth can be measured in numbers and can be calculated. So it is not an argument to go for a decision maker by saying, yeah, but then it will be more beautiful, we will have more fun and we can scale better. He will be like, yeah, blah, whatever, in and out. So he doesn't understand.
And in the end, it doesn't scale. Why is that?
Yeah, but put some numbers in front of him.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Raise your voice.
This is not an action. So I got a couple of questions that are directed to special, like to one person in the discussion round. First of all, Pryker, you mentioned earlier that like I'll start one step backwards. A max standard e-commerce feature set ensures low time to market, they say, for most customers. If you're saying that this 90-10 example that the colleague of Intershop noticed is not valid, what is your approach to deliver time to market, TCO, ROI, whatever you want?
Yeah. So there are different reasons for why developers are slow or why they could develop like features fast. So again, I have personally been involved and worked with different platforms such as Magento, Hybris, ATG, and Demandware. So I have seen quite a few. And very often the development of a pure feature X is not the real problem. So you could develop this feature X in all of these platforms pretty fast. So the problem is like everything that comes around that, right? So things like you need to make it work with the cache, with whatever cache you use in the front end. You need to make it work with the search. You need to make, you start thinking about how to make a fast application. You might have TV traffic, whatever. You might want to slice your team to allow for more productivity, right? So your front end, your backend teams, your services teams, domain teams, whatever. So like a lot of meta reasons that slow down the initial development, which are not like pure development. So this is what we focus a lot on. So we try to eliminate all these reasons, like one by one, right? From have a good architecture, make it modular, allow for updates of just the parts that you want to update. Don't have to update the entire system. Avoid the complex varnish kind of caching. Make a better search. Make sure that you can slice your teams and they don't intersect, etc., etc. So this we make sure on the technology side, but at the same time we think very carefully about what kind of features we put into the core and what features we feel are not relevant. And so to be very honest, again, I'm in this e-commerce market for the last 15 years. So the standard RFP document is a bullshit bingo kind of Excel spreadsheet. I already know what is in the sheet when I open it up, right? So 500 lines of features that no one needs, no one will ever implement them. Who needs this review starts on the PDP configurable in color? Who needs this? Will this drive traffic? Will this drive conversion? Will this increase revenue? No one needs this feature, right? But still, things like that are in this RFP, so this is something we definitely do not see in core. But there are things that we see in core, and then again, it's our decision what we put in. But the main message is we see less and less being a kind of standard feature. So we believe a lot in that you need to differentiate yourself, so you need to build things. We as a vendor have to provide the right capability so that you can build your personalization, your discount logic, your way of boosting the search in a fast way so that you don't start from scratch, from zero, But this does not mean building 10,000 configurable options of discounts so that it takes longer to configure these options rather than to build the 3 discount options that you need for your particular business case. I think this is kind of the difference in the approach.
So thank you for having such a long answer that we don't have any more room for questions to
Also,
you
no
guys.
comment of me, because you mentioned discounts, and yeah, we have promotion engine, and the business user can just configure it, and you don't need any development at all. So.
But this again, we see that this market has moved on this kind of strategy. So in the Magento time, for example, 10 years ago when I started with Magento, the business guys, the e-commerce manager, he was running away from the EDV, so we're in Germany, right? So they did not want to be involved with going to the manager of the ERP anymore. So they wanted a lot of capabilities in the front-end system that they can configure by themselves. So if you look at a modern IT, if you go to this About You talk, the CTO and this team, this has nothing to do with this EDV kind of logic anymore. And these guys, they build a lot of the things they need, right, by themselves. They will never ever put this logic, like they will never ever build like 10,000 of discount codes that they will never need, right? So they will build the 5 they need, they will try them out, they will kick out the 3 that do not perform well, they will build another 3.
Yeah, I can just say we see the opposite. We see customers coming to us. They currently, if they want to do a marketing campaign, they have to go to their developers and explain them what the business wants, and they don't want it anymore. They just want to go in the system and configure the promotion rules by themselves.
So obviously a different approach to the same problem. I can see both sides of the equation. I just got told that we got a couple of more minutes. I hope you have time. So one question to Intershop: which of the other platforms that are here or not here do you see as your main competitors? And we need shorter answers.
commercetools.
That's fine. So and then that leads me to the next question, which I especially like. And maybe you can start. Somebody asked, what do you like especially about any of the other platforms? And are you jealous of features or some other dimensions of that platform?
Yeah, again.
I guess your answer is commercetools.
It's commercetools. We also have REST APIs. We have storefront-focused REST APIs, pretty complete, in some cases even better. In many cases better than commercetools, but we don't have the REST APIs for all the backend processes.
I said so. Jealous, not...
Yeah, I said I'm jealous for the REST APIs for the back office functionalities.
Okay. So, do you have any competitor you would like to join after this discussion?
Me?
Or are you just fine with your current company?
You know what? Well, I'm very fine. But you know, Magento fascinates me with their Magento 1 to Magento 2 move. Given the 6,000 customers, I think it's a really interesting business opportunity to convert them to 2, to get them to the Enterprise Edition, and then get them on the cloud and convert to a true SaaS model. I think it's fascinating, and there's a great opportunity there. And for that segment of the market, it's a compelling stack. It's a very opinionated, well-documented, well-understood stack in the market, and I think it's very interesting.
Okay, that brings us to Sander. You said you were working on Magento far too long, so where to move now?
No, I'm staying with Magento for now. We're looking into Magento 2.
But if you had a choice, and Magento 2 is not a valid answer.
Honestly, I've been playing around with Molten, and they're completely API-based.
Molten to me is a beer. What is?
It's a French company, I think, and they offer e-commerce completely based on APIs. So for me, that's kind of interesting approach.
Have you had a look at the commercial stuff?
No.
So maybe that would be interesting for you as well.
I'll get a demo. Sounds good.
Okay, Dima.
Tough question.
Be brave.
Yeah, Yeah, probably I will just double down on our solution.
Okay, fair enough. Boris?
I appreciate personally the open source nature of Oro Magento a lot. So I think this is like very cool if you can leverage, if you can create, and if you can leverage the power of a community in some ways. So I think the business strategies for like going open source or being more open are different. But in general, especially, so I mean, Oro is new, right? At least the commerce product, but since Dima was also involved in Magento somehow, I think, again, if you have this power, if you have like 100,000 of developers worldwide who are somehow engaged, can create a community, good spirit, and contribute, like help you test your software, help contribute things. This is in general interesting. I think if it's very unique what especially Magento did, and Oro tries to repeat this. Yeah.
Last but not least.
Oh, I got nice words for everyone. So, Pryker, I like your logo. I really like the building you're working in Intershop. Yeah, you ever seen that tower? It's amazing. I like the API approach of commercetools, which is really clever. I like that you're so international, although I don't like the orange, but then the rest is cool. But I think the cleverest move here, maybe from our systems, is from OroCommerce, because B2B is the thing to be, and you're just focusing on that. I mean, we 1 year ago released a OXID B2B edition, so just an edition only for B2B, and the things we recognize in the market is that we somehow get connected to B2B, and that we're in talks of people that don't know nothing about the edition, but they somehow prime, oh, there is something. And your approach in marketing, like we're B2B only, nice stuff.
So I guess the point goes to Oro in this case.
This time Oro.
I wanted to finish the discussion with a new question that has 0 upvotes, which is a scandal in itself. And he, like Tom, asks, like, are not shop systems in the end only customer GUIs for underlying backend processes? And does the choice of a platform even count in the end? Isn't it completely? Does it matter at all?
The question is right. You need some kind, not just a shop. You need a customer engagement platform. And of course, the choice is very important, because
Why?
you have to integrate all the backend systems. You have to provide APIs for all the touch points.
But doesn't anybody who is on stage right now tell us that you provide the means to integrate the stuff?
Yeah, but some on the stage here have better means to integrate the stuff.
But how do these guys over there and their bosses and the bosses of their bosses know that you are telling the truth? Because obviously you get paid for telling that.
They can, for example, go to the internet, search for Intershop REST API, and compare to the REST API of commercetools. It's also publicly available.
But as far as I know,
but the deciders will never do that. You know, deciders will never do that. It's like there's one single truth, I guess, in every pitch. Everyone here who's doing a pitch is having or is obeying this one rule, and this is customers are buying solutions. They're not buying technology. And the solution is everything, you know. And it starts from who's sitting in front of me. Do I like the guy I want to invest 500,000 euros into? So whatever they get, if you run on microservices or macro service or whatsoever,
Yeah, but there are still some hard facts. Still.
Well, yeah. Okay, I read quite a lot of those marketing papers, and that's a good finish line for this discussion. Thanks everybody for the questions. Thanks everybody for the honesty. And whenever you have a question for anybody on stage, they are around today and tomorrow. Like today, not that much anymore, but tomorrow. Feel free to approach them, I guess, whenever you don't meet them. They are using social media and all that kind of stuff that is modern today. So thanks everybody, and see you later.